Hello everyone, I am Zorine Te from Yahoo Esports. Joining me in the studio today is Noah Whinston, CEO of Immortals. Noah, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we have a lot to talk about today. You guys have just made a host of announcements for your League of Legends roster. I guess my very first question is, what is your goal for the team this split?
Yeah, I think setting concrete goals can be really important, and I think specifically with the roster that we put together this split, our primary goal is helping to develop a lot of the newer players that we have on the roster. So Coach SSONG, Stunt, Onda, these are players with a tremendous amount of potential that have just never really had the opportunity to show it on an LCS stage before, and also never really had the experienced teammates necessary to help them develop into more complete players. So aside from competitive finishes, where we also have goals, right? Our main goal is how do we make sure that we have kind of a long-term competitive future for the Immortals roster. And that doesn't just mean how do we make sure we can get the best free agents that are available every year. It also means how do we perfect our systems for developing talent and making sure that talent is committed to us long-term. From a competitive perspective, I think a fair goal for this roster is to make playoffs. And once we make playoffs, anything can happen, right? I'm not expecting to go in and win this split, but I am expecting to go in, be top 6, and maybe position ourselves well for a run at the gauntlet.
Now, I wanted to go back to an announcement which you made earlier last week, which was quite a big deal. You announced that you were releasing Dardoch and that you had acquired Xmithie instead. So Dardoch, he had been initially signed to Immortals on a 3-year contract. What led to the move of, you releasing him?
Sure. So, I think Dardoch is a fantastic player, right? He's tremendously talented. He can take over the game in a way I've not really seen from any other player. But you can't just look at a player in a vacuum, right? Like, Dardoch being a good player does not necessarily mean he's the right choice for a particular team. Because it's important not just to see one player, but you also have to see the impact that that player has on his teammates and on the others in the game. So ultimately, I think Dardoch is a player that can succeed on other teams, right? He can succeed on CLG. He could succeed potentially on a different team. With Immortals, certainly a lot of the games we won last split were Dardoch going off and carrying. But a big reason why he needed to be the one to go off and carry is because he wasn't the best fit for our team dynamic, and that did have a negative impact on a lot of the other players within the team. This isn't an issue of him being a rager or toxic all the time, or a lot of the things that people will claim on the internet, right? It's not nearly in the same vein as outsiders would try and predict, but certainly what we're trying to create in the roster this year is something that's more than the sum of its parts. And we felt last split like, realistically, we were performing less than the sum of our parts. And so in order to do that, in order to perform more than the sum of our parts, we need kind of a more open and friendly and healthier team environment in order to get people not just willing to work together, but wanting to work together.
And Xmithie himself, he's known as an intelligent veteran jungler. Why choose him in particular?
We were really looking for somebody who could not only be a good force on our team for this split, but could also help mentor the upcoming players in Stunt, Onda, and Coach SSONG that we have on our team. All of whom have shown flashes of brilliance, and all of whom definitely need a veteran presence there on the team to help guide them along their career path. So we feel like Xmithie is not just a tremendously talented jungler in his own right, super smart about the game, great teammate, but also someone that brings a wealth of experience to help those newer players.
Are there any other traits that you feel that he brings that Dardoch didn't necessarily have?
I wouldn't paint it as some sort of direct comparison between them. They each have their own strengths. They each have their own weaknesses. I do think that many people outside of the team environment don't know a lot about him, right, in terms of the way he is inside the game. A lot of people look at CLG and say, oh, Afro is the main shot caller. Realistically, a lot of those early game shot calls were being made by Xmithie. And so he is bringing a level of vocal communication to the team as well, which has helped so far.
How has he fitted in with the team so far?
From a social aspect, it's great, right? Him and Poe Belter have played together before. They're good friends. He's an incredibly easy guy to get along with. If I needed to draw a comparison to other players that have played for us in the past, I think he's a lot like Wild Turtle, right? Just a chill guy, super easy to get along with. Does have a tremendous passion for the game, a tremendous passion for winning, but that never kind of takes away from the relationships that he builds with his teammates. And as far as in-game, I mean, scrims so far have been going well. I'm not going to comment on specific results, but I'd say we're performing a bit better in scrims than we did last split, and we're definitely performing better in scrims than we did on stage last split.
Mm-hmm. What has he brought to like the comms side of things? I mean, on CLG, you know, they're particularly known for having a clear comms. Like, how has Xmithie changed that up?
I think our communications last split were difficult because we had players that were willing to relay information, but not a lot of players that were willing to kind of synthesize that information into a decision, right? So a lot of players were willing to say, hey, here's how my lane is going, here's where the enemy jungler is. Not a ton of players, and not a ton of the time, being willing to say, hey, this is what we should do in this given situation. And so that's kind of the focus of communication that we're taking during our practice this split. And so far, that's been a place where Jake has helped out.
Mm-hmm. It sounds to me that he's sort of bringing, I guess, a bit of seniority to the team as well. Is that the kind of role you foresee him having?
Seniority from an experience perspective, yes, but as an organization, we don't really buy into the idea of team captains, right? So there is no explicit leadership role there. All players are equal in the eyes of the coach. And so ultimately, the authority within a team dynamic should lie with the management, it should lie with the staff, it shouldn't necessarily lie with any particular player.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of coaches, you guys did recently announce that you were parting ways with Hermes, and at the same time announcing a new coach, Coach SSONG, who was previously coach for Najin Black Sword, Rocks Tigers, Sang-soo Gaming. Why him in particular?
So we had really good experiences talking with Song ahead of bringing him onto the team. Mm-hmm. And what we were looking for in a coach was somebody, specifically in a head coach, was somebody that had a more holistic sense of that duality between strategic and out-of-game necessities for players, right? So not just someone that knows the game very well, not just someone that commands respect for players because of his previous pro career or his previous coaching career, but also somebody intelligent about the ways that team dynamics can shift, right? And about the necessity of maintaining and improving relationships between players. We also really liked that he was coming from Korea with a better knowledge of how to effectively use substitute players. We didn't want Onda and Stunt just sitting on the bench for a split doing nothing, right? And already within scrims, they've been taking an active role in that. They've been playing some of our scrims, and he's taking an active role in developing them. And finally, we felt, especially for Flame and Ole, having a Korean coach would be really helpful because it would give them another person in the house for them to relate to, for them to look up to and respect, and for them to kind of try and follow in the footsteps of. So we feel like Song kind of combines a lot of the key attributes that we were looking for in a coach, and we're really looking forward to seeing how he continues to help improve the roster.
What are some of the challenges that you are facing integrating a Korean coach into an NA team?
I mean, certainly there's a language barrier aspect. There is where our previous manager, now kind of elevated in a different role, Dodo 8, has been, June is an invaluable piece of the Immortals organization, not just because of the way that he's helped create a good environment for players, but now he's also taking an active role in helping translate for Song and helping communicate with the rest of the team.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So we've seen a lot of import coaches not necessarily work in China, and both Korea and China. What is it that Immortals is doing to ensure that your acquisition of Song is a success?
I mean, I'd say that Korean players coming over to North America has in general been more successful. I think in China, so far, maybe there haven't been as many attempts to create the assimilation or integration of Korean players into a Chinese team environment. For us, there are a lot of steps that make it easier, right? We have Po Belter, who is Korean American and so is able to kind of connect with his Korean teammates. Ole basically speaks fluent English at this point. We have a chef coming in and making Korean meals twice a day, every day during the week.
Wow.
So our goal is not throw Korean players into an entirely foreign environment and hope that they sink or swim, right? It's create some soft landings for them so that they're able to more easily integrate into a North American atmosphere, which is a difficult transition as it is. Mm-hmm.
And when you were looking for coaches, were you specifically looking for someone from Korea, or was it kind of like NA was also an option, but nothing really quite panned out there?
We were looking everywhere, but we honestly didn't find a ton of options that we felt embodied all of the different pieces that we were looking for, and we're happy that Song was one of those options.
Mm-hmm. How do you rate the analysts and coaching style in NA?
I mean, that's a really hard question. I personally am one of the people that is really against these like coach of the split awards, because I think there's no way for you to know how good a coach is being outside of the team, right? Like, you can assign a ton of blame to coach about pick and ban, but realistically, anybody inside a team knows that pick and ban is done as a cooperation of coaching staff and players, right? The best coaches are ones that cooperate with their players to set pick and ban priorities. So what you see on stage is never just a coach going rogue and doing it all on their own. And like, improvement or lack thereof in a team, partially attributed to coaching staff, partially attributed to the players. So from my perspective, I wouldn't even deign to like try and rate or like presume to try and rate a coach in North America that hadn't already coached my team.
Moving on, you mentioned that you were signing new subs in Stunt and Anda. That's a pretty big move. How is Stunt going to share the role with Ole? What's the timing going to be like?
Sure. Well, ultimately, that's up to coaching staff, right? That's not something that we're dictating from a management position. But for both Anda and Stunt, we expect them to share time in scrims. We potentially expect them to play on stage. Our goal with them is, we view Stunt and Anda as kind of the future of IMT. Right? Not from the perspective of we expect them to single-handedly carry the team at some point, but from the perspective of wanting to create like a longer-term talent pipeline, right? We can't, no organization can be good every single year by just going out and trying to sign the biggest free agents. That's not a sustainable way to create success in traditional sports or in esports. So for us, it's really important to build up franchise players that buy into the Immortals culture, that we know are stable and talented and have the right kind of personality to mesh with teammates on a year-to-year basis. And we feel like the only way to really perfectly identify those players is to try and build them from the ground up, right? Cody-san, Anda, Stunt, these are all players who don't have a ton of LCS experience before Immortals. Some have not. Anda and Cody-san have never played an LCS before Immortals. So for us, we view that as an opportunity to kind of build the players that we want to see. And that's what we're trying to do.
But surely there's a screening process, I suppose, that you put them through. Like, when you're choosing these up-and-comer players, and there's not necessarily a lot of information about them out there, what sort of factors are you looking for?
Well, I mean, Stunt had previously been on Team Liquid Academy, which means he had worked with Nick Fan, our current general manager, who was previously at Team Liquid. Anda and Cody-san played together on Dream Team in Challenger Series. So all of these players kind of have some amount of knowledge out there, right? It's not like we're picking them fresh from solo queue. It's not like we look at Anda's solo queue accounts and see he is 3 in the top 50 of Challenger, and that means he's going to be a good LCS player. It's a lot more nuanced than that. We're looking for personality, we're looking for character, we're looking for skill, and we feel like in Anda and Stunt we found 2 players who have all of those.
How is Anda going to be working with Xmithie? I suppose you mentioned before that he would have like a bit of a mentoring role. Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to oversell it, right? This isn't some sort of a jungle shadowing program, right, where he follows Xmithie around every day and learns how to be a great jungler. It's more of a team effort to develop a player. But having someone as experienced with such good game knowledge as Xmithie on the team means that Anda has a resource that he can go to when he has questions, right? The goal of having that kind of mentorship relationship is not that it is suddenly Xmithie's responsibility to teach this guy how to play the game, but it does mean that when Anda wants to talk to somebody about champion priorities, or wants to talk to somebody about jungle pathing, or wants to talk to somebody about the best ways to communicate with teammates, he doesn't just have to go to a staff member. He doesn't have to go to a teammate that plays a different role. He can go to a teammate that has a very similar role, similar style of experience and play. It's a lot easier.
That is super interesting. I think the mentorship thing is one that not many teams in NA are doing right now, or at least they're not integrating it into their core roster right now. So that's cool. Well, that wraps up all my questions. Thank you so much for your time today, Noah, and best of luck in the upcoming split. For more League of Legends coverage, be sure to keep it right here on Yahoo Esports.